The plane touched down at JFK. I should have been in Santorini with Ethan, my husband, finishing our honeymoon. But a small blue cross on a pregnancy test changed everything. A baby. Our baby. I wanted to tell him in person in a special way. I took a cab to our apartment on the Upper East Side. Ethan thought I was coming back in 2 days. I left my suitcase in the living room. A crazy idea popped into my head. What if I hid? Waited for him to get home and then jumped out with the surprise. It would be perfect. I slipped into the walk-in closet in our bedroom. The darkness was calming. I touched my stomach. He'll know soon, I thought. Then I heard the key in the lock and voices. Not just Ethan's, but Eleanor's, my mother-in-law. Her tone sent a chill down my spine. They moved into the living room just outside the bedroom. You shouldn't have come here, Mother, Ethan said. He sounded tense. We need to talk, Eleanor replied, her voice as cold as ice. Time is running out. She could discover the policies at any moment. I held my breath. Policies. I know, Ethan said. But this is different. It's exactly the same as it was with your father, Eleanor snapped. That was a business deal, and so is this. No one will suspect a heart attack in a young woman just like with your father. A heart attack. Like with my father. My palms started to sweat. I pulled out my phone and with trembling fingers I pressed record. Quiet, Ethan whispered. Your father was weak. We are not. The sum is enormous. We have to act before she talks to a lawyer. And the other thing. In progress, Ethan said curtly. The drops. She won't notice a thing. It worked for the miscarriage. A whimper caught in my throat. My miscarriage. Ethan had comforted me. He'd said it was a normal thing to happen, that it wasn't my fault. Good, Eleanor said. I heard the sound of a quick kiss. Secure the papers. I'll handle the rest. Don't be weak. I heard her footsteps walk away. The front door closed. Then Ethan's steps headed for the bedroom. He stopped right in front of the closet. My heart was pounding so hard. But he didn't open it. He went to his study. I heard the key turn in the lock. I waited. I crept out of the closet. I couldn't stay. I had the recording. It was real. I remembered his words, the usual place, his study. Ethan always locked it, but there was a small transom window over the door to the service hallway, always left ajar for ventilation. Without thinking, I ran out and took the service stairs. I peered down the hall. The study's transom window was open. Carefully, I hoisted myself up, squeezed through, and dropped inside. The study was immaculate. I saw the safe next to his desk. Ethan wrote his passwords in a moleskin notebook. I opened his top drawer. There it was. I tried numbers. Nothing. I tried the date we met. A soft click. The safe swung open. Inside, just file folders. The first was labeled life insurance. I opened it. I saw my name. Emma Clark. A figure in the millions. Beneficiary Ethan Hayes. Another policy. And another. 3. Just as she'd said. Underneath another folder. Arthur Clark. My father. His policy. Beneficiary. Eleanor Vance, my stepmother. The sum was also enormous. The last thing was a photograph. My father, younger, with a woman who wasn't Eleanor. She had Ethan's eyes. On the back, in my father's handwriting, Evelyn, my love. Take care of our Emma. May she never know. Evelyn. Ethan's mother, the one he said, died in childbirth. A cold dread washed over me. It all clicked into place. They didn't just want to kill me. They had already killed my father and the real Mrs. Vance. I was next. I stuffed the papers and the photo into my purse. I slipped out through the transom window. On the street, the sun was shining. My old life was over. All that mattered now was surviving and making them pay. I searched for a contact on my phone. A friend, Chloe, had given it to me once as a joke. Just in case, she'd said. Michael Russo, private investigator. I dialed the number. Russo, a gravelly voice said. I need help, I said, my own voice sounding calm and strange. My husband and my mother-in-law want to kill me. I hung up with Michael Russo, the PI. I'd agreed to meet him the next day at a discreet cafe in Greenwich Village. Now I had to act normal. I went back up to our apartment, dragging my suitcase with a deliberate clatter. Honey, I'm home, I yelled, forcing cheer into my voice. Ethan rushed out of the study. His face was a rapid succession of emotions. Surprise, panic. then a wide, forced smile. "Emma, darling, what are you doing here? I thought you were back on Thursday." We hugged. His embrace felt rigid. He smelled of his cologne but also of tension. "I missed you, and I have a surprise," I said, looking him in the eyes. I tried to see the murderer, but I only saw my husband, the man I fell in love with. It was heartbreaking. "A surprise, better than the sunsets in Santorini," he joked, pulling away. I noticed his left hand slip into his pants pocket, probably to silence his phone. "Much better. But I'll tell you later. I need a shower." The flight was exhausting. I lied. I needed to get away from him before my nerves betrayed me. "Of course, sweetheart. I just have to finish up some work." He headed back to the study. The door closed, but I didn't hear the lock turn this time. Maybe he was overconfident, or maybe he was in a hurry. I went to the bathroom, turned on the hot water, and sat on the edge of the tub, shaking. Then I remembered something. His phone. I'd seen him glance at it a moment before. When I came out of the bathroom wrapped in a towel, Ethan was in the kitchen opening a bottle of wine. His phone was on the granite countertop, face down. "I'm just going to grab my moisturizer," I said, walking past him. He nodded, focused on the cork. In one swift motion, I flipped his phone over and tapped the screen. It asked for a passcode. I guessed wrong, but before it locked, I saw a notification from a cloud storage app in the banner dose log. Low, PDF deleted. My blood ran cold. Dose log. He turned around. "Find everything okay?" "Yes." "Yep," I smiled, backing away. "Just tired." That night, dinner was a performance. He talked about work projects. I nodded. My mind was elsewhere on the recording, the safe, the words miscarriage and drops. When he stood up to clear the plates, his phone, now on the table, vibrated briefly. The screen lit up. A message from Chloe, my best friend, appeared in the preview. "Ethan, I can't do this anymore. Last night was a mistake. Emma's my friend." The world stopped again. Chloe and Ethan. Last night, while I was supposedly in Greece. He quickly grabbed the phone, swiping the notification away without looking at it. "Work email," he said. "Oh," I replied, stabbing the fork into the salmon I could no longer swallow. The next morning I went to see Dr. Miller, my OB, GYN, for my first official pregnancy appointment. "Everything looks great," he said. "Strong heartbeat." He let a comment slip as he reviewed my history. "I see you had a spontaneous miscarriage 2 years ago. It was quite sudden, no prior symptoms. Sometimes, in very rare cases, certain substances can induce something similar. Were you taking any new medication back then?" "No, none," I said, my heart in a vice. "Just the prenatal vitamins you prescribed." He frowned. "The same ones I prescribed for you afterward." "Interesting." "Well, keep taking them. They're essential, of course." I left the office feeling sick. Certain substances, my vitamins, the ones Ethan dutifully set out for me every morning next to my coffee. "For your health and the baby's," he would say. I didn't go home. I went to a CVS, far from our neighborhood, and bought an identical bottle of prenatal vitamins. Then, in a coffee shop, I emptied the contents of my pill case into a napkin and replaced them with the new ones. I saved the old ones in a small plastic baggie. Evidence. Afterward, I met Michael Russo at the cafe in the village. He was a man in his 50s, bald with intelligent, weary eyes. I told him everything except about Chloe. I gave him the recording, the photos of the insurance papers, and the baggie with the vitamins. "This is serious, Mrs. Hayes," he said without flinching. "Very serious. I'll start digging into Eleanor Vance and her first husband, Ethan's father. Get a burner phone. Don't use your personal one for anything important. Anything else, my friend Chloe," I added, lowering my voice. "I think she and my husband." Michael nodded. "I'll look into it. Be careful around her." That evening, Ethan said he had a work dinner. I knew it was a lie. I followed him. I took a discreet Uber. He drove to an apartment in the West Village. It wasn't an office. I waited. An hour later, Chloe walked out of the building, adjusting her jacket and hurrying away, glancing around nervously. Ethan didn't come out. I cried silently in the cab on the way back. Betrayal was a many-headed monster. 2 days later, Michael called me on the burner phone. Eleanor Vance. Her first husband, Mr. Vance, Ethan's biological father, died of a heart attack at 40. Routine autopsy. Nothing suspicious. She collected a sizable insurance payout, remarried 2 years later to a civil engineer, Arthur Clark, a widower with a daughter. "Me. My father," I whispered. Exactly. About Chloe. He paused. She and Ethan had a brief relationship a few years ago before you two got serious. It seemed to be over. Until now. Thanks, Mike. One more thing, Emma. That baggie of vitamins, I gave it to a contact in a lab. They'll analyze the contents. I'll let you know. After I hung up, I was tidying up and noticed the drawer of my nightstand was slightly out of place. Someone had been through my things. Ethan. Looking for what? The recording. The papers. He wouldn't find them. I had them stored in a locker at Grand Central. That night at dinner, Ethan was especially affectionate. He poured my water from a new pitcher. Filtered water. Purer for the baby, he said with a smile. Before I could drink, I feigned a coughing fit and knocked the glass over on the tablecloth. Oh, I'm so clumsy. It's okay, honey, he said, cleaning it up, but I saw a flash of impatience in his eyes. Or disappointment. As he was cleaning, a small piece of paper fell from his jacket pocket. A receipt from a pharmacy in Boston, not New York. I discreetly covered it with my foot, then scooped it up with the napkin. Later in the bathroom, I looked at it. Street Martin's Pharmacy, Boston. A recurring purchase of a medication, propranolol. A beta blocker, for anxiety, hypertension, and to induce cardiac arrest in high doses. I remembered the deleted file on his phone dose log, low, PDF, and Dr. Miller's words certain substances. My burner phone rang. A text from Michael. Lab results in. Call. With the Boston receipt burning in my hand, I dialed. Michael's voice was grim. Emma, the vitamins your husband was giving you contain traces of misoprostol. It's a drug that can induce a miscarriage in the early weeks, I finished, my voice choked. Yes, and the blood work from your previous miscarriage, which I had my contact pull, shows compatible markers. It wasn't natural, Emma. It was induced. I hung up. I looked at my reflection in the bathroom mirror. There was no more fear in my eyes, only a cold, absolute determination. Tomorrow I would go to Boston to Street Martin's Pharmacy. I needed one more confirmation. And then I would need a plan. Because now I knew the truth. And they suspected I knew. The game had changed. The Acela to Boston sped past the gray hills of Connecticut. In my purse, the receipt from Street Martin's Pharmacy seemed to burn. Michael had advised me not to go, that he would investigate. But I had to do it myself. I needed to see the face of the person who sold the poison that killed my father and was now being prepared for me. I wore a hat and sunglasses, feeling like a spy in my own life. Ethan thought I was at an interior design workshop in Philadelphia. I'd sent him a quickly edited fake photo from the station. His reply was a simple, "Have fun, honey. Miss you." The words now had the taste of metal and lies. Boston rose up a labyrinth of brick that held secrets. Street Martin's Pharmacy was on a cobblestone side street near Beacon Hill. It was a small, old-fashioned place with a worn wooden sign. A smell of herbs and dust hit me as I entered. Behind the counter, an older man in glasses and a gray smock was reviewing some papers. "Good morning," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Morning, ma'am. How can I help you?" His tone was friendly, distracted. "I hope you can." "It's a bit delicate." I took the folded receipt from my pocket and slid it across the counter. "My husband usually buys his medication here. Propranolol. But he's so forgetful. I need to confirm the exact dosage to get a refill in New York." I'm afraid he told me the wrong one. The pharmacist took the receipt, adjusted his glasses, and looked at it. Then he looked at me more attentively. His expression shifted slightly from distraction to a subtle caution. "Hayes." "Ethan," he read quietly. "Yes, I remember him. A customer for years. Very punctual." He paused. "But ma'am, this information is confidential. I can't." "I know. I know." I interrupted, taking out my wallet. I showed him my driver's license. "I'm Emma Clark Hayes. His wife. Here." I lowered my voice. "The truth is, I'm worried. He says it's for anxiety, but sometimes he takes more than he should by mistake. You see, his father had heart problems, and I'm just scared." I let the sentence hang in the air, a thread of genuine anguish in my voice. The part about his father wasn't a lie, only the cause. The pharmacist, Mr. Antonio, according to his name tag, studied my ID and then my face. His gaze softened. A wife's concern was something he understood. "I understand," he said with a sigh. "It's a high dose. 100 milligrams. Normal for certain arrhythmias, but he lowered his voice for a young, seemingly healthy man. It's a significant dose. And the frequency. He buys it every month religiously. Sometimes he sends an older woman to pick it up. His mother, I assume. Eleanor. Yes, his mother, I confirmed, my heart pounding. And has he always bought this dose? Mr. Antonio frowned. No. At first, years ago, it was 25 milligrams. Then it went up to 50, and it's been like this for about 5 years, I'd say. 5 years. Around the time my father died. A sudden, massive heart attack. And before he was my husband, I pushed, trying not to tremble. Did he come in with another prescription for another name? The pharmacist stiffened. Ma'am, that's really, please, I whispered, and my eyes filled with unforced tears. The exhaustion and fear did the rest. I just want to help him. He wavered, glanced at the empty doorway to the street, and leaned in. His voice was almost inaudible. A long time ago, when I was just starting here with my father, a man. Vance also. Ethan's father, I believe, came for the same thing, propranolol. I remember because he died shortly after. Young. A heart attack, they said. He swallowed hard. And then the same lady who comes in sometimes now, his wife, came to pick up his things. And after a while, young Ethan started coming in with a new prescription. The tiled floor seemed to tilt. It wasn't a suspicion anymore. It was confirmation. A family practice passed from father to son, with my father caught in the middle. Thank you, I managed to articulate. Thank you for your understanding. Ma'am, he said seriously before I left, take care of yourself. And your husband. That medication is not a game. I stepped out into the blinding light of the street. Take care of yourself. The words echoed, like a warning. I sat on a bench in Boston, calm and dizzy. I took out the burner phone and called Michael. I'm in Boston. He confirmed it. Ethan buys high-dose propranolol, has for years. His father did too. Right here. Died of a heart attack. The pharmacist remembers. Michael let out a low whistle on the other end. That connects the pieces. I'm digging into the death of the first Mr. Vance. The medical examiner's files from back then are sparse. Too concise. But there's a name that keeps popping up. Dr. Andrews, the family's primary care physician. He died in a car crash 6 months after the death. It wasn't a coincidence. Nothing was. Emma, get back to New York. Carefully. While I waited for the train back, a text came through on my personal phone. It was from Chloe. Emma, we need to talk. It's urgent. About Ethan. I'm so sorry. Can we meet tomorrow? Anger and pain churned inside me. Talk after what she'd done. But maybe it was an opportunity. I could get information out of her. Or confront her. Yes. Tomorrow. The usual spot. 5 p.m., I replied coldly. The trip back was a blur. When I got to the apartment, it smelled of cleaning products and a home-cooked meal. Ethan was in the kitchen. Sweetheart, how was Philly? He asked, coming over to kiss my cheek. His eyes scanned my face. Good, good. Lots of ideas, I said, pulling away towards the bedroom. I'm going to take a shower. Emma, wait. His voice stopped me. Are you okay? You look pale. Just tired. The trip, the pregnancy, you know. I smiled weakly. He nodded, but his gaze remained unconvinced. Of course. I made baked salmon, something light. And your vitamin. He pointed to the blue pill next to my water glass on the table. The new vitamin, the one I had placed there myself this morning before I left. But seeing it there, offered by him, made me nauseous. Thanks, honey. In a minute. In the shower, I cried silently. The net was closing in around me. Boston, the pharmacist, Chloe, Ethan in the kitchen with his mask of a concerned husband. I needed more. I needed something irrefutable. After dinner, while Ethan was watching the news, I remembered something. In the storage locker in the basement, packed away since his death, was a box of my father's personal things. Eleanor had wanted to throw it out, but I'd refused. I had never gone through it completely. The pain was too great. Now the pain had mutated into something else. I waited for Ethan to fall asleep. Then, silently, I went down to the storage unit. The cardboard box marked A, C, was in a corner. I opened it. It smelled of time and nostalgia. Old books, a pair of glasses, his favorite wristwatch that no longer worked, and a small photo album. I opened it. Pictures of my childhood, of my real mother smiling, and then a photo that took my breath away. My father, younger, in a garden with his arm around a woman's shoulders. It wasn't Eleanor. It was the woman from the photo in the safe, the one with kind eyes, Evelyn. And next to them stood a younger woman with a hard face and a cold stare. Eleanor. But not the mother-in-law I knew. This was a younger Eleanor with a tense, almost forced smile. The three of them looked uncomfortable. My father wasn't looking at the camera. He was looking at Evelyn with a profound sadness. I turned the photo over. On the back, in my father's shaky handwriting, as if written long after Brooklyn Botanic Garden 2009, with Evelyn and her sister Eleanor, the day before everything broke. I never should have given in. Forgive me, Emma. You must never know. Her sister. Eleanor wasn't Ethan's biological mother. She was his aunt. Evelyn, the woman in the photo, must have been his real mother. And what happened to her? An accident like Dr. Andrews. I closed the box, trembling. The story was more twisted than I had imagined. Aunt and nephew bound by secrecy and crime. I went back to the bedroom. Ethan was sleeping soundly. His phone on the nightstand blinked with a notification. I couldn't resist. I picked it up carefully. It needed his fingerprint to unlock. With extreme care, I took his sleeping hand and pressed his index finger against the sensor. It unlocked. My heart was hammering. I searched his texts. Nothing recent with Chloe. He deleted it. I searched his email. Nothing suspicious. Then, I remembered the deleted file. I checked the empty trash bin, but there was a cloud storage app. I opened it. It asked for a password. Frustrated, I was about to give up when I saw the Notes app. I opened it, and there it was. A list of dates and numbers, daily dose cumulative. They were recent dates. And next to some was the notation V and W. Vitamin. Water. The last date was today, with a W next to it. I looked at the glass of water still on my nightstand, half full, the one he had lovingly poured for me at dinner. I had drunk some of it. Not all. A cold sweat drenched me. It wasn't just the vitamin. It was the water. The new filtered pitcher, he'd said. It was filtering poison in. I carefully took the glass. Tomorrow, I would take it to Michael. It had to be analyzed. Someone was going to pay, and I was starting to have the evidence. Tomorrow, I would see Chloe. And then, I would have to decide my next move. It wasn't just about running anymore. It was about fighting back. The usual spot was one of those trendy Soho cafes, with dim lighting and hanging plants. Chloe and I used to go there to laugh about our problems. Today, the air smelled of betrayal. I arrived first. I sat at a table in the back, my back to the wall. I needed to see everything. Chloe arrived 5 minutes late. She looked like she had aged 10 years in a week. Deep circles under her eyes, her hair without its usual shine. When she saw me, she hesitated as if she was about to run. Then, her shoulders slumped, she walked over and sat down. Emma, she started not looking me in the eye. She fidgeted with a paper napkin. "Thanks for coming." I said nothing. I just stared at her, waiting. My silence was more powerful than any reproach. "I'm sorry," she whispered, tears welling up. "I'm so sorry. It wasn't just last night. It's older." "Last night?" I asked with an icy calm. "You mean when my husband, your best friend's husband, visited you at your apartment while I thought I was on my honeymoon? Or the time before that?" She paled. "You know." I saw the message. "How long, Chloe?" "Before you and him," she swallowed hard. "Years ago. It was brief. A mistake. We stopped when you two met, I swear." She looked up, pleading. "But since you got married, he came back. Said he was confused that the marriage was a pressure." I was an idiot, Emma. I was jealous. Jealous of you, of your life. Stop justifying yourself. I cut her off. "I'm not here to listen to your sob story. I'm here because of what you said in your text. It's urgent. About Ethan. Talk." Chloe looked around, nervously lowering her voice even more. "A few months ago, Ethan came to see me. He was really upset. He said he needed a favor. A huge favor. That he was scared for you. For me, yes. He said your behavior had changed, that you were really paranoid since the miscarriage. That you were afraid of having another problem and didn't want to go to the doctor. He said your OB/GYN doctor. Miller had found something in your blood work, something bad, but he didn't want to scare you. He asked me to modify a report. That from the hospital lab I could access the results and change them. I felt the floor drop out from under me. Modify a report, a hormone panel to make it look normal. He said it was for your peace of mind that he would take you to another specialist in secret later. That it was the only way you wouldn't freak out. Chloe was crying silently. I did it, Emma. I thought I was helping you. I changed the values in the system so everything looked okay. What values did you change? I asked, each word a shard of ice. Thyroid levels and some coagulation markers. Ethan gave me the normal values I should put in. Coagulation. Could that affect a pregnancy, a delivery, a hemorrhage? And then Chloe continued choking after the miscarriage. He asked for another favor, to delete the history of that modified test, to make any trace of it disappear. He said it didn't matter anymore, that you were over it. And I did it again. Did you know what was in my vitamins, Chloe? I asked directly. Did you know they were poisoning me? Her eyes widened in genuine horror. What? No, Emma, my God, no. He only told me about the tests, about your mental health. I never. She covered her face with her hands. I'm such an idiot. A selfish idiot. And now I'm scared. After he left last night, I think my apartment was searched. Nothing was missing, but things were moved. And I got a call from a blocked number. A distorted voice said, "Stop digging into things that aren't your business." The first time was a warning. The first time. A week ago, my car brakes failed. I almost got into an accident. I thought it was a coincidence. Now I don't know. Emma, I'm scared. And him. Ethan asked me yesterday if I still had copies of the original reports, the ones I changed. He said he wanted to destroy them all for security. Of course. Erase all the evidence, like the file on his phone. Like Dr. Andrews, who died in an accident. Do you have copies? I asked, grabbing her arm. She nodded, crying. On a flash drive at my place. I hid it after the call just in case. In case something happened. You have to give it to me, Chloe. It's important. Yes, I'll give it to you. But what's going on, Emma? What has Ethan done? Before I could answer, her phone vibrated on the table. She looked at it, her face turning white. It's him, Ethan. Don't answer. I have to. If I don't, he'll suspect. With a trembling hand, she swiped to answer. Hello. Yes, I'm with her at the cafe. Yes. No, nothing, just talking. Yes, I already told you I don't have anything. Okay, talk later. She hung up, looking at me terrified. He wants to see me tonight. He says it's important. To bring the flash drive. Don't go, Chloe. I have to. If I don't, he'll know I told you something. And then... She didn't finish the sentence. The fear spoke for her. I'm going to go. I'll give him the flash drive and then I'm getting out of New York for a while. To my sister's, in Philly. It was a terrible idea, but I couldn't stop her. Not without telling her the whole truth, and that would put her in even more danger. Okay, I said, resigned. But give me the flash drive first. I'll make a copy. Then you can give him the original. That way you have something to negotiate with if something happens. She hesitated, then nodded. It's at my place. Let's go now. Her apartment was nearby, a small, cozy place that now felt like a death trap. While she went to get the flash drive hidden behind a painting, my burner phone vibrated. A message from Michael Eleanor. First husband, father of E. Had minor heart condition. Dr. Andrews was treating. Certified death as natural heart attack. Dr. Andrews died in car crash. Brake system failure. Same pattern as your friend Chloe's accident. Be careful. My heart stopped. Brake failure. Chloe, wait! I yelled, but it was too late. I heard the sound of the front door opening. Not from the hallway, but from the interior garage entrance. Quick steps and Ethan's voice sweet and venomous. Chloe, honey, I'm here. No need to come down. I stepped out of the room. Chloe was frozen in the hallway, the flash drive in her hand. Ethan was in the entryway, smiling. His smile froze when he saw me emerge from the bedroom. Emma. What a surprise. His gaze flickered from Chloe to me, calculating. What are you doing here? Same as you, I guess, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Visiting a friend. What a coincidence. His tone lost all its sweetness. Chloe, come here. We need to talk. Chloe, trembling, took a step toward him. I took a step forward. Give me the flash drive, Chloe, Ethan said, holding out his hand. She looked at the drive in her hand, then at me. Absolute panic was in her eyes. Ethan, Now he ordered a coldness in his voice that chilled the blood. Chloe, as if in a trance, extended her hand. At that moment the main doorbell rang. A sharp, authoritative buzz. NYPD. Open up. All three of us froze. Ethan cursed under his breath. Chloe, with a quick movement, tossed the flash drive to me. I caught it mid-air and shoved it into my jeans pocket. Ethan shot me a murderous look, then went to the door and opened it with a forced smile. Outside stood two police officers, a man and a woman. The man, tall and with tired eyes, showed his badge. Good afternoon. Detective Frank Miller. Are you Miss Chloe Bennett? Yes, that's me, Chloe said, her voice trembling. We received an anonymous call reporting a possible disturbance at this address. Everything's fine, Ethan interjected, putting on his charming man mask. Everything's perfect, Detective. Just a small disagreement between friends. Nothing serious. It's all sorted out, right, ladies? He looked at Chloe and me. His look was an order. I stayed silent. Chloe, too. Detective Miller observed the three of us, his gaze lingering a second longer on my pale face. His eyes seemed to miss nothing. All right. If you're sure, he said, unconvinced. Mr. Hayes, isn't it? I've seen you at some charity events with your mother, Eleanor Vance. A very active woman. Yes, that's right, Ethan said, his smile tight. Well, we won't bother you any further. Miller turned to leave but then stopped. Oh, and Miss Bennett. Be careful with your car. Brakes are important. Sometimes they fail suddenly. Cause some very ugly accidents. His gaze met mine for a fraction of a second. It was fast, but I saw it. A warning. Then he left with his partner. The door closed. The silence in the hallway was thick. This is over, Ethan said, the mask on. His voice was a thread of hatred. Chloe, you're leaving now. And you, Emma, you're coming home with me. He grabbed my arm hard. We need to talk. In the car on the way home, we didn't exchange a word. The tension was a wall between us. When we arrived, Eleanor was waiting in the living room. Her gaze pierced me like a stiletto. Problems, she asked curtly. Nothing I can't handle. Ethan grunted, letting me go. Emma's going to rest. She's very overwrought. Yes, rest, dear, Eleanor said with a fake smile. You have to think about the baby. I locked myself in the bathroom. I took out the flash drive Chloe had given me. I had it, proof. But I was also terrified. Detective Miller knew. His warning wasn't random. Was he an ally or part of Eleanor's network? I hid the flash drive inside the toilet tank cistern. No one would look there. That night, while I pretended to sleep, I heard Ethan and Eleanor whispering in the living room. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone was urgent, angry. The next morning, the headline on the news site made my blood run cold. Young woman dies in tragic car accident on the BQE. Mechanical failure suspected. The photo blurry showed Chloe's small car smashed against a lamppost. The article said she had died instantly, that she was speeding, that it could have been brake failure. I collapsed into a chair. Chloe had gone to see him. Had she given him the flash drive? Or did he just think she had, and then an accident? The burner phone vibrated. A message from an unknown number. I opened it. It just said, "You're next. Stop digging." Seconds later, my personal phone rang. It was the number for the hospital where Chloe worked. I answered, my throat tight. Mrs. Emma Hayes. This is the lab supervisor. We regret to inform you of the passing of our colleague, Chloe Bennett. You are listed as her emergency contact. We were wondering if you could come by to collect her personal effects. I hung up. I couldn't breathe. Guilt, fear, and rage were suffocating me. The phone screen lit up again. This time it was a call. Private number. I answered, voiceless. Mrs. Hayes, Detective Frank Miller, NYPD. It was the detective's voice from yesterday, grave and calm. About your friend's accident. I need to ask you a few questions. Officially, it's an accident. But to me it stinks. Can we meet somewhere public today? I looked at the closed bedroom door. On the other side, my husband and mother-in-law were planning my death. And in my pocket was a flash drive with proof they had started poisoning me long before I knew. Yes, I whispered. We can meet. Where? Was it a trap or a lifeline? I didn't care anymore. They had killed my friend. Chloe had paid for my curiosity. I wasn't going down without a fight. Detective Frank Miller's voice was an anchor in the storm of panic. We met at the Conservatory Garden in Central Park, a public place full of nooks and crannies. I arrived early watching the families and tourists. The normality of it all felt offensive. Miller arrived in civilian clothes, looking even more tired than the day before. He sat next to me on a bench, hidden among exotic plants. "I'm sorry about your friend," he said, without preamble. He called me Mrs. Clark, I noted, not Hayes. The preliminary report says it was mechanical failure. A worn-out brake line. She told me her brakes failed last week. She almost had an accident, I whispered, staring at the leaves of a ficus. She received a threatening call. "I know," Miller said, surprising me. Her phone was at the scene. We checked the records. A call from a burner impossible to trace. A warning. He paused. "You received a message too, didn't you? It wasn't a question." I nodded. "You're next. I have to ask you something directly, Emma. Do you believe your husband Ethan Hayes and his mother Eleanor Vance are involved in the death of Chloe Bennett?" The question asked in a low, clear voice set me free. "Yes, and in my father's death, and in the attempt to poison me and my baby." The words came out in a contained flood. I told him about the recording, the policies, the pharmacy in Boston, the vitamins, the altered lab reports. I showed him the flash drive Chloe had given me before she died. I didn't tell him I had stolen documents from the safe. That was too much. Miller listened impassive. Only his eyes darkened as I spoke. When I finished, he took a deep breath. "This is big, very big and dangerous. Eleanor Vance isn't just anybody. She has contacts in the force in the M.E.'s office, in insurance companies. Her first husband, Ethan's father, was a respected businessman. His death was very convenient for her finances, and no one looked twice. It was all legal on the surface. Just like Chloe's accident. And just like whatever they're planning for you." He looked at me intently. "You cannot stay in your home. Not one more day. Where do I go? I don't have anyone." A lie. I had someone. A person I hadn't seen since my father's death because Eleanor didn't like her. My grandmother in Charleston. "Perfect. Go today. Don't use your credit cards. Withdraw cash. Use the burner phone only to contact me at this number." He gave me a card with a number written on it by hand. "And your private investigator if you trust him. No one else. No old friends. Understood?" "Yes." "And what are you going to do?" "Investigate from the shadows. Officially, Chloe's case is closed, but I can poke around." "At your father's death. The first Mr. Vance. Dr. Andrews. I need time. And you need to disappear." I nodded. I was scared, but also filled with a fierce determination. "There's something else," I said, remembering. "Eleanor isn't Ethan's biological mother. She's his aunt. My father was involved with the real mother, Evelyn, before all of this. I have a photo." Miller frowned. "That complicates things, or simplifies them. The blood tie isn't there, just the interest. I'll look into Evelyn Vance, or whatever her name was. Go now, Emma. Now." I returned to the apartment feeling like a thief. Ethan wasn't there. I left a vague note, "Gone to Grandma's in Charleston for a few days. Need some air. The pregnancy is overwhelming me. Talk soon." It was believable. My paternal grandmother Rosemary and I were close before my father died. Afterward, Eleanor had created distance. I packed a small bag, just the essentials, including the flash drive, the photo, and the photograph documents. As I passed the study, the door was ajar. Inside on the desk, I saw an opened envelope from a bank. A statement from an account in the Cayman Islands. A massive incoming wire transfer from an insurance company I wasn't insured with. The date was the week after my father's death. The beneficiary, Eleanor Vance. The proof was so blatant it was obscene. I took it. It was a risk, but I couldn't leave it. The flight to Charleston was a blur. Every creak, every person who got too close made me jump. When I arrived at my grandmother's house in the historic district, a wave of emotion washed over me. Rosemary, with her white hair in a bun and her apron on, opened the door. Her eyes, filled with the same weary wisdom as always, lit up, then clouded with worry when she saw my face. "My child, what's wrong?" I collapsed into her arms and cried like I hadn't since this all began. I told her everything, or almost everything, softening the most horrific details so as not to scare her. She listened in silence, stroking my hair. When I finished, she didn't seem surprised. "I always knew that woman was a viper," she said in her soft southern drawl. "Your father was blind. He was so lonely after your mother left, and she came along with her son and her fine manners. But she had cold eyes, Emma. Cold as a marble tombstone. And that boy, he always looked at her like he was waiting for an order." "Grandma, did you know about Evelyn?" "That she was Ethan's real mother?" Rosemary nodded slowly. "Your father told me once, drunk on grief. He had fallen in love with Evelyn, a good, sweet woman. Eleanor was her older sister, envious and bitter. When your father and Evelyn started seeing each other, Eleanor raised hell. Said she had sacrificed to raise Ethan after his frivolous sister abandoned them. Lies. All lies. Evelyn didn't abandon them. She left because Eleanor made her life impossible. Your father believed Eleanor's lies, felt guilty, and in the end, he married her. It was his ruin. And Evelyn? What happened to her?" "She died shortly after your father married Eleanor. A household accident, they said. A gas leak." My grandmother's eyes flashed with anger. "Nobody investigated it. Your father was devastated. And from then on, Eleanor took control of everything. The money, the house, Ethan." I shuddered. The pattern was clear. Eliminate anyone who got in the way. I settled into the guest room. For a few days, it was a sanctuary. The smell of jasmine from the porch, the quiet streets, my grandmother's simple cooking brought me back to a more innocent time. I spoke with Miller on the burner phone. He was still investigating, but cautiously. "There are roadblocks," he'd say. "Missing files, witnesses who don't want to talk." Michael, the PI, also called. He had followed the insurance money trail. It flows through several shell corporations in tax havens. But there's a pattern. Huge payouts after each death. Your father, the first Mr. Vance, and a man named Ramon Delgado, Eleanor's first husband that no one talks about. He also died young. Hunting accident. 3 men. And now Chloe. And me. One afternoon, after coming back from shopping with my grandmother, I noticed something odd in my room. My pregnancy journal, a small, silly notebook where I wrote thoughts for the baby, wasn't where I had left it. I found it in a drawer under my clothes, open to a page where I had written, "I dreamt of a black car chasing me tonight. I'm scared, little one, but I'll fight for you." Someone had read it. In this house, it was only my grandmother, and she would never go through my things. "Grandma, has anyone been in the house? A neighbor? A delivery person?" She shook her head, worried. "No, child. Just the cleaning lady Lola who comes on Thursdays." But today is Tuesday. Someone had been here. They knew where I was. That night my grandmother insisted we go to the evening service at her parish. "It will do you good, child, to pray." I wasn't a believer, but I agreed. The church was full. The smell of incense was thick. My grandmother made her way through a crowd of old friends. I stayed back near the door, feeling out of place. Then I saw her, Eleanor, standing by a pillar dressed in severe black, praying with a rosary in her fingers. Our eyes met across the smoke and candlelight. She showed no surprise, just a faint, cold smile. Then, she approached my grandmother. I watched as she spoke to Rosemary. My grandmother turned pale. Eleanor took her hands with false compassion. Then she turned and left, gliding through the crowd like a shadow. "What did she want?" I asked my grandmother, when she came back to my side, trembling. "Nothing, child, nothing. Just offering her condolences for Chloe." But she wouldn't look me in the eye. "Grandma, tell me the truth." She sighed, defeated. She said I should be careful, that pregnancies at your age can be dangerous, that Ethan's mother, the real one, poor Evelyn, had complications during childbirth and bled to death, that it was a tragedy that she, as the older sister, had to take charge of the baby. She said that history sometimes repeats itself. Rosemary grabbed my arm. "Emma, that woman is the devil. She's threatening you." It wasn't a threat. It was a promise. She was telling me how they would do it. An accident during delivery. A hemorrhage. Something that with the altered coagulation test results Chloe had faked would be perfectly believable. And everyone would pity the grieving widower Ethan, who would collect the insurance. The plan was perfect. Monstrous, but perfect. We walked home in silence. That night, while my grandmother slept, I took out the burner phone. I had to warn Miller. I had to do something. But before I could dial, I received a message from Michael. It was short and terrifying. Found Evelyn Vance. Didn't die in a gas accident. Admitted to a private psychiatric facility 1 month after your father's wedding to Eleanor. Diagnosis: psychotic depression. Died there 6 months later. Official cause: suicide. Certificate signed by Dr. Andrews. I located a nurse's aide who worked there then. Says Evelyn was always screaming that her sister wanted to steal her son, and that a young man, a teenager, would visit her secretly, bring her candy. One day after one of those visits, Evelyn was found dead. Overdose. The teenager's name was Ethan. I dropped the phone. He wasn't just an accomplice. This was his work too. Eleanor had corrupted her own nephew, molded him in her image. They had eliminated his own mother, my father, and now they were coming for me and my child. I looked out the window at the dark, quiet Charleston street. The sanctuary was no longer safe. They knew. They had found me, and they had cruelly reminded me of my programmed fate to die like Evelyn, like my father, like Chloe. But I was no longer the scared Emma hiding in a closet. I was a mother who had been robbed of everything, and a mother with a plan. I had the evidence. I had Miller. I had the truth. And now, I also had the spark of revenge. The next day, I called Miller. We need to act. We can't wait anymore. They have a plan for the delivery. I know how to make them expose themselves. What do you want to do? He asked, his voice cautious. I need you to help me fake my own death, I said, my voice clear and steady for the first time in weeks. Or at least the death of my baby. The plan was risky, almost insane, but it was the only thing I could think of. I needed Ethan and Eleanor to believe their plan had worked, that the baby was no longer a threat to their macabre business. I needed them to relax, to lower their guard, to make a mistake. Miller was reluctant at first. It's too dangerous, Emma. If they suspect for even a second. They already suspect I cut him off. They knew I was in Charleston. They know I'm scared. If I suddenly suffer a tragedy, it will be believable. They're expecting it, and when they think they've won, they'll do something stupid. Like try to leave the country or collect the insurance too early. After much discussion, he agreed. He had a sister, Laura, who was an OB/GYN at a small private hospital outside of New York. He explained part of the situation to her, just enough to get her help. Horrified, she accepted. We couldn't use a public hospital. It was too risky. Someone would recognize my name or face. A week later, from a payphone in Charleston, I called Ethan. I sounded shattered, my voice breaking with what I hoped sounded like sobs. Ethan, something's happened. Something terrible. I swallowed hard, looking at Miller, who watched me from a distance. The baby. I've had a horrible bleed. I'm at the hospital. On the other end of the line, there was a silence. Then his voice filled with perfectly acted concern. Oh my God, Emma, where are you? What hospital? I'm on my way. No, don't come. They're running tests. It's a mess. Grandma is with me. The doctors say, they say it's likely we're going to lose him. A genuine sob escaped my throat, because saying it out loud, even as a fake, felt painfully real. Emma, honey, I have to be with you. No, I said forcefully. I can't. I can't see you right now. I'm not strong enough. I'll call you later when I know something. I'm sorry. I hung up. My hands were shaking. Miller came over and handed me a tissue. You did good, he murmured. The next step was the hardest test. We had to simulate an ER admission and a convincing medical report. Laura Miller's sister organized everything. I would enter through a back door with a fake ID and be admitted to a discreet room. She herself would write a report of a spontaneous miscarriage with hemorrhagic complications, linking it to the coagulation disorders that appeared in my manipulated medical history, a history that ironically they themselves had created, through Chloe. 2 days later in New York, everything was ready. Dressed in loose clothes and pale from makeup, I entered the hospital as instructed. Laura, a petite woman with brown hair and kind but worried eyes, was waiting for me. She took me to a private room. You'll be alone here. If anyone asks, you're a patient under my care for an incomplete miscarriage requiring a D&C. I've faked all the paperwork. Her voice was professional, but her hands trembled slightly. I hope you know what you're doing, Emma. My brother trusts you, but this is very extreme. I don't have another choice, I said, lying down on the bed. The antiseptic smell turned my stomach. It wasn't hard to look sick. The operation was in motion. Miller was watching from the outside. Michael, the PI, was listening in on Ethan and Eleanor's phone conversations, thanks to a bug he had managed to plant in her car. The first intercepted call came that afternoon. Eleanor's voice cold as marble. Have you confirmed it, Ethan? She says she's in the hospital, that she was bleeding. She sounds devastated. I called the hospital. Her grandmother gave me Mount Sinai in Charleston. They say they have no one by that name admitted. My heart stopped. Charleston. We hadn't anticipated he would call hospitals there. My grandmother, under my instruction, had given him the name of the largest hospital, thinking the bureaucracy would cover us. It was a mistake. You see, I told you, she's smarter than she looks. She's lying, Ethan. And why would she do that, Eleanor? Because she knows something. She's scared, or she has proof. This whole charade is a trap, to make us complacent. There was a silence. Then Ethan, in a new, icy and determined voice. Then we accelerate Plan B. We can't wait for the delivery. It's too risky. If she suspects, and she's gone to the police. I agree, Eleanor said. The father's method, clean and quick. Do you have what's necessary, Ethan? Yes, I have it put away. But I need access to her. If she's not in Charleston, where is she? Leave that to me, Eleanor said. I'll find her. You get ready, and book the tickets to Argentina, as we agreed. Once it's done, we're gone. With the policy money, we'll live like kings, far away from here. Michael sent the recording to Miller, who in turn sent it to me. Listening to it lying in that hospital bed was like drinking poison. There was no doubt. They were talking about killing me like they were talking about taking out the trash. The father's method. The propranolol. Or something else. We have to move them. Miller said over the burner phone. If they're planning on going to Argentina, they want to act soon. He said he needs access to her. If they think you're in Charleston, they'll go there. But if they think you're here in New York vulnerable, he was right. We needed a bait. Publicize my location, I said, my voice hoarse. Discreetly. Have Michael leak through some corrupt contact Eleanor might have in the force that a Jane Doe has been admitted to a private hospital with my description after a complicated miscarriage, that I'm unconscious in serious condition. Something to justify why I can't have visitors. It was a reckless move, but it worked. The next day, the next intercepted call was different. Ethan, his voice excited. I've got it. A contact at the precinct. There's a woman with no ID admitted at St. Jude's Hospital. Came in by ambulance last night. Matches the description. She's on the maternity floor, room 214. Under watch because she has no papers, but she's sedated. It's her. It has to be. Police watch, Eleanor asked. Just one officer at the door for protocol. Nothing serious. This is our chance. If she's in bad shape, we can finish the job. It will look like a post-op complication. Then straight to the airport. Tonight, Eleanor said. I'll take care of the guard. You bring what's necessary. I'll see you there at 2 a.m. The trap was set. But they didn't know that the officer at the door would be Miller, and that the sedated patient in room 214 wouldn't be me but a mannequin with a wig and a monitor simulating vital signs. I would be hidden in the adjoining room connected to a camera feed, along with Laura and another trusted officer from Miller's team. The night fell heavily. St. Jude's Hospital, an old building, was quiet. From my hiding spot, I could see the screen showing room 214, the figure under the sheets, the dim light, the monotonous beep of the heart monitor. Miller, in uniform, stood guard at the door, yawning exaggeratedly for anyone who might be watching. At 1:45 a.m. they appeared. First was Eleanor. She was dressed as a nurse in scrubs and a cap. She carried a small bag. She approached Miller. Good evening, officer. Night shift. Vitals check. Her voice was professional, impersonal. Miller, playing his part, nodded lazily. Go ahead. The poor thing hasn't moved in hours. Eleanor entered the room. A minute later, Ethan arrived. He wore a dark jacket and gloves. In his hand, a small case. He nodded at Miller and went in after his aunt. My heart was beating so hard I was afraid they could hear it down the hall. I gripped Laura's hand, who was next to me, pale as a sheet. On the screen, I saw Ethan approach the bed. He observed the still figure. Then he gestured to Eleanor. She nodded. He opened the case and took out a pre-filled syringe and a small vial. It wasn't propranolol. The liquid in the syringe was clear. Cyanide, maybe. Or something just as fast. I'm sorry, Emma, Ethan murmured, and his voice, amplified by the hidden microphone, sounded almost genuinely sad. But this is necessary. Just like with your father. Quick and painless. I promise. Eleanor watched the door. Ethan moved closer with the syringe. He was going to inject it into the IV bag hanging from the fake stand. At that moment, Miller walked into the room, closing the door behind him. He no longer looked like a tired guard. He looked like a wolf. "Quick and painless, Mr. Hayes," he said, his voice clear. Like with Arthur Clarke, right? Ethan and Eleanor spun around in unison, petrified. The syringe fell to the floor, rolling to a stop at Miller's feet. "What? What is this?" Ethan stammered, his gaze darting from Miller to the bed and back to Miller. "It's the end of the game," Miller said. He gave a signal. The room's lights suddenly switched on. From a side door that led to a storage room, I stepped out, followed by Laura and another armed officer. The camera that had been recording me was now broadcasting live to a police mobile unit waiting outside. Ethan's face was a mask of absolute horror. Emma. But how Eleanor, on the other hand, did not lose her composure. Her coldness was unnatural. "Very clever," she said, looking at me with contempt. "But this proves nothing. We were here worried about my daughter-in-law. I brought her medication. Medication that hasn't been prescribed for her," Laura interjected, pointing to the syringe, "and which I'm sure matches what you used to poison her father and probably your first husband." "Nonsense," Eleanor snapped. "This is a setup, a frame job." It was then that more footsteps were heard from the hallway. The main door opened, and several officers entered, accompanied by a man in a suit. He was the head of the homicide unit. Miller had been working quietly, but not alone. Eleanor Vance and Ethan Hayes, the man in the suit, said, "You are under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, attempted murder, and suspected involvement in the homicides of Arthur Clarke and Evelyn Vance. You have the right to an attorney." As the officers cuffed them, Ethan broke. "It was her," he screamed, nodding his head towards Eleanor. "She planned everything. She made me do it. My father, Emma, my mother." Eleanor looked at him with icy disappointment. "Shut up, you fool." But the mask had fallen. The evidence was overwhelming, the recordings, the syringe, their own confession captured by the microphones. They were led out of the room. The last image I had of Ethan was that of a scared, defeated child. The last of Eleanor was of a dethroned queen, upright and silent, walking towards her fate with disdain. Miller came over to me. "You're safe now, Emma." I nodded, but I didn't feel relief. Only a vast, trembling emptiness. I had won. I had survived. But the cost had been too high. My marriage, my friend, my innocence, it was all destroyed. I looked out the hospital room window at the dark New York sky. The police were putting Eleanor and Ethan into patrol cars. Soon they would start talking, blaming each other. The pieces of the puzzle would fall into place. But something in Eleanor's eyes, a final, cruel glint of triumph before they took her away, left me with a deep unease. It had been too easy. Was this really the end? Or just the end of an act? The calm that followed the arrests was brief and deceptive. I stayed at Street Jude's that night under police protection. I couldn't go home to our home. That place had ceased to exist for me. Miller insisted on a full workup. "After everything they've given you, Emma, we need to know what state you're really in." At first I resisted. I just wanted to sleep, to turn off my brain for a century. But Miller's logic was overwhelming. If they had tried to poison me in so many ways, maybe something had taken hold. Dr. Laura, still pale from the night's tension, oversaw the tests. They drew blood, took urine samples, and performed an exhaustive ultrasound. The baby, miraculously, was fine. A strong heartbeat, oblivious to the hell surrounding it. That was the only ray of light. I spent the early hours of the morning in a restless doze until Laura entered the room. Her expression was serious, professional, but with a shadow in her eyes that chilled me more than any of Eleanor's glares. "Emma," she began, sitting beside me, "the toxicology results are not normal. The vitamins, the propranolol," I asked, sitting up. "Yes, there are traces of misoprostol consistent with what you found. But there's something else. Something we weren't looking for." She paused, searching for the words. "There are elevated levels of arsenic in your blood. Very elevated. On the borderline of acute toxicity." The air vanished from the room. "Arsenic. It's a slow, cumulative poison," Laura explained. "It causes non-specific symptoms: fatigue, nausea, abdominal pain, confusion. It can be administered in small doses over a long time without raising suspicion, mimicking an illness. And in a massive dose, it's lethal." I remembered the overwhelming fatigue of the past few months, the nausea I'd attributed to the pregnancy, the mental fog. Ethan would say, "It's stress, honey, or the hormones." And I believed him. "How long?" I whispered. Judging by the levels you've been receiving, regular doses for weeks, maybe a few months. This isn't something you take by mistake, Emma. It's deliberate administration. The water. The new pitcher. The meals he prepared so carefully for the baby, he'd said, and I like an idiot swallowed it all. What does it mean for the baby? It was the only thing I could ask, clinging to the one pure thing I had left. Laura placed a reassuring hand on mine. The levels in the fetus are lower. The placenta filters some of it. But we can't take any chances. You need chelation therapy to detoxify. It's a medical emergency now. At that moment, Miller burst into the room. His usually tired face was tight with urgency. Eleanor's gone. The words landed like lead weights. What? She was under arrest. She was being transferred to the courthouse holding cells. The transport van was intercepted by a car that caused a minor fender bender. A distraction. When the escorting officer got out to check the damage, someone opened the back door from the outside and pulled her out. It was a matter of seconds. She has help, Emma. Professional help. And Ethan, I asked, my voice barely a thread. He's in a cell, singing like a canary to get a deal. He's terrified mostly of her. Miller ran a hand over his face. But that's not all. While we were searching Eleanor's townhouse, we found something in a hidden floor safe in her closet. It wasn't jewelry. What was it? Documents. Death certificates, insurance policies, and small funeral urns. 3 of them. With names Ramon Delgado, Anthony Vance, Arthur Clark, your father, and another name Manuel Gutierrez, who we hadn't heard of. Her husband's, I asked, remembering what Michael had hinted at. Yes, at least the first 3 were. Ramon Delgado was her first husband, Ethan's biological father. Anthony Vance was the second, died a year after marrying her in a boating accident. Manuel Gutierrez was a serious boyfriend before she met your father. Died of sudden heart failure. All of them lonely men with some capital, all with policies in her name. She's a predator, a spider who marries her prey. Michael is tracking down the bodies, Miller continued. We got a warrant to exhume the remains of Ramon Delgado, the first Vance. The preliminary ME. Results came in an hour ago. He paused dramatically. High levels of arsenic in the bones, and what was left of the hair. Chronic poisoning. Just like you. It all clicked together with a sinister noise. The method was the same, slow, sure, unstoppable. I was just the latest in her collection. She hasn't left. I said suddenly, certain. The fear transformed into a cold conviction. She hasn't left New York. Not yet. Miller looked at me intently. Why do you say that? Because the job isn't finished. Ethan is in jail. I'm still alive, and so is the baby. And she doesn't leave jobs half done. Especially not when there are witnesses. I touched my stomach. The arsenic was her quiet plan attributable to an illness, but that had failed. Now that we knew treatment could neutralize it. She knew that. She needed a plan B. Faster, more direct. You need to go to a secure hospital, Emma, to detoxify, Laura insisted. No, I said, with more strength than I thought I had. If I hide, she'll disappear. She'll change her identity, go to another country, and in a few years there will be another Ramon Delgado, another Arthur Clark, and I will live my life in hiding. I looked at both of them. Let's use this. Let's use the poison. Miller frowned. What are you proposing? That I pretend the poisoning has taken effect? That I'm in critical condition on the verge of death? That the baby is in danger? Laura can be my doctor. She can leak that my condition is critical, that I need an urgent medical evacuation, maybe to a specialized hospital out of state. Something that forces Eleanor to act fast, to risk coming to finish the job herself, if her network can't do it in a guarded hospital. It was madness, but in that madness lay the only chance. Miller and Laura exchanged a long look. Finally, Miller nodded. It's risky, but you're right. As long as she's out there, you'll never be safe. And there may be more accomplices we don't know about. We have to draw her out. He turned to Laura. Can you fake the symptoms? Yes, she said, with determination. I can set up a fake ICU room in a defunct clinic, I know. Monitors charts, I can make it look real. And I can administer a harmless saline drip that will make you drowsy and pale to make it convincing. We'll monitor the baby constantly. The drip won't hurt him. But Emma, it will be physically grueling. I'm already running the risk, I interrupted. Let's do it. The plan was set in motion with military precision. Laura, using her contacts, spread the word that a pregnant patient, poisoned with arsenic, was in grave condition at a private clinic on the outskirts of the city, and that an emergency transfer to a specialized center in Boston was being considered. That same night, Miller made sure the leak reached the ears of any corrupt contacts Eleanor might have. I faked a rapid decline. I was moved by ambulance sirens blaring to a semi-abandoned clinic that looked like something out of a horror movie. The room they prepared was cold, lit by the bluish glow of monitors that blinked with my fake vital signs. A saline drip flowed into my arm. I felt weak, scared, but more alive than ever. Adrenaline was my best antidote. Michael was monitoring communications. Ethan from his cell had made one desperate call to a low-level lawyer linked to Eleanor. The message was cryptic. "Tell Mom the flower is wilting. The gardener needs to cut it before they move it." It was the confirmation. She was coming. Night fell on the clinic. Miller and two of his most trusted officers hid in the adjoining room and in a closet in mine. I had a panic button under the sheet. The wait was torture. Every creak of the old building, every gust of wind was Eleanor approaching. Until near midnight, the silence broke. Not from the door, from the window. She had forced it with terrifying skill. A dark, agile figure slipped inside. This wasn't the elegant, composed Eleanor I knew. This one wore dark clothes, her hair pulled back, and in her gloved hands the metal of a long syringe glinted. She approached the bed. The moonlight illuminated my face. Her eyes, now free of any mask, shone with a horrifying satisfaction. She watched me, believing me to be unconscious. "As stubborn as your father," she murmured almost to herself. "He also thought he could defy me. That he could love that weakling of a sister more than me. Look how he ended up. And look how you'll end." She raised the syringe. She wasn't aiming for the IV. She was aiming directly for my neck. A quick jab, a massive coagulant perhaps that would cause an instant stroke. Or pure cyanide. "No mistakes this time," she whispered. In that instant, I pressed the panic button and opened my eyes. "Hello, Eleanor," I said, my voice firmer than she expected. Her reaction was feline. A flash of surprise followed immediately by the decision to strike anyway. Her arm came down like a whip, but before the needle touched my skin, the closet door burst open and Miller sprang out, grabbing her wrist and twisting it hard. The syringe clattered to the floor. The other two officers emerged from the next room, guns drawn. "Freeze, police." Eleanor struggled with unexpected wild strength. She wasn't screaming. She was growling. Her eyes, fixed on me, burned with a pure primal hatred. "He was mine," she spat, referring to my father or Ethan or all of them. "Everything was mine." "You had no right," Miller managed to cuff her as he pinned her down. She never stopped looking at me. "Believe me, girl," she hissed, "even if they lock me up, I've already won. You're carrying my gift in your blood. You and your offspring will carry my mark to the grave." It's slower, but just as sure. Those were her last words before they dragged her away, but their poisonous echo lingered in the cold room. Miller approached, concerned. "Emma, no," I said, sitting up despite the trembling in my legs. "She hasn't won. Call Laura. Start the treatment. Now. Today. And have that syringe sent to the lab for analysis." I looked him in the eye, and in mine there was only the cold steel of will. "I'm going to live, Frank. And so is my son. And she is going to rot in a cell knowing that she failed." The poison was in my blood. But the antidote, I realized in that moment, wasn't just in a drug. It was in the rage, in the decision to live, and in the justice that was finally beginning. The detoxification treatment was hell. Days in a white hospital room with IVs that pulled the poison from my blood gram by gram, leaving me weak and shattered. But every pang, every wave of nausea, was a reminder I was alive. And in every ultrasound, my son's steady heartbeat was a hymn of victory. Eleanor was in a maximum security cell, awaiting trial. Without her mask of respectability, the press devoured her, the Salamanca widow, the high society poisoner. The exhumations of her husbands confirmed the pattern: arsenic in all of them. Ethan, from his cell, kept singing. In exchange for a reduced sentence, he offered every detail. He confessed it was Eleanor who killed his real mother, Evelyn Miller told me one afternoon at the hospital. Gave her an insulin overdose during one of her visits to the psychiatric facility. Ethan, who was 16 at the time, saw her do it. Instead of being horrified, he says he felt relieved. Eleanor told him it was to free them, so they could be a family without her. That was their pact. It was monstrous. She had molded her accomplice from adolescence, poisoning his soul long before she poisoned others. He confessed about your father too, Miller continued, his voice grave. Eleanor tampered with his cholesterol medication, mixing it with high doses of propranolol. The heart attack was a given. And Chloe, yes, it was the brakes. Ethan sabotaged them the first time as a warning. The second time after your meeting at the cafe was Eleanor. She had a contact at a body shop. She wanted to silence her and get back the flash drive she thought Chloe still had. I closed my eyes, holding back tears. The rage was a cold fire. And the plan for me? The arsenic was Eleanor's, in the drops in your vitamins and in the water filter pitcher. A long-term plan. If that failed, plan B was the massive propranolol dose like your father. And if all else failed, the direct injection. She wanted the pleasure of doing it herself like the others. She has to face all of this at trial, I said, opening my eyes. She can't hide behind an insanity plea. She won't, Miller assured me. But we need something more, something that ties her personally to all the crimes beyond Ethan's confession. Something personal. Then I remembered. The recording of my father, the one Michael had found among his old things on a cassette tape and digitized. I hadn't listened to it. I hadn't dared. Miller handed me a pair of earbuds. My father's voice, weak and full of static, filled my head. If you're hearing this, Emma, it means I'm gone, and that you found the strength I never had. Eleanor. Eleanor is not what she seems. She is sick with ambition and with hate. She's been giving me something that makes me feel weak, confused. I think she's the one behind Evelyn's death. And I fear for you, sweetheart. If something happens to me, it wasn't natural. Look for it, find the truth, and get away from them. Forgive me for not being stronger. I love you, my daughter. It was the proof. The final link. The trial was a media circus. Eleanor pleaded not guilty, cold and defiant, until the prosecution played my father's recording. For the first time, her mask cracked a twitch in her eye, a clenching of her jaw. Then when the D.A. announced a surprise witness. A forensic expert, who linked the arsenic from the exhumed bones to a batch of pesticide she had purchased 20 years ago. She crumbled, not emotionally, but strategically. She stopped fighting. Her empty gaze settled on me. There was no remorse, only the acknowledgement of a lost game. Ethan, from the defendant's table, cried like a child. His testimony had been crucial, but his guilt was just as profound. He was sentenced to 30 years in prison for complicity in multiple homicides. Eleanor received a life sentence to be served in a secure psychiatric prison. Just as slow and clumsy had worked. 6 months later, the scent of jasmine and salt air had replaced the smell of the hospital. I was on the porch of a historic Charleston house under a spring sun. In my arms slept Daniel, named for my father's middle name. He had clear eyes and a peace on his face that I fought every day to find for myself. I had sold the apartment in New York, and almost everything that reminded me of that life. With the money and a small civil suit against Eleanor's estate, I bought a small house with a garden near Charleston to be close to my grandmother. Therapy was long, the fear still woke me up at night sometimes, but Daniel's little noises anchored me to life. That day, however, I wasn't at my house. I was at Frank Miller's wedding. After the case, we had become friends. He had been my rock. When he invited me, I didn't hesitate. I needed to see that happy endings were possible. The ceremony was simple in the town's old church. When Frank, in his slightly uncomfortable navy suit, turned to watch his bride come down the aisle, his face lit up in a way I'd never seen. The music swelled, and then she appeared. She wore a simple lace dress with no train. Her hair was longer, falling in soft waves. She walked with a slight, barely perceptible limp, a physical reminder of what happened. But she was alive. She was smiling, and her eyes found mine in the crowd before settling on Frank. It was Chloe. A choked sob escaped my chest. After the ceremony, I hugged her so hard I almost woke Daniel. Tears streamed freely down both our cheeks. "I'm so sorry, Emma, so sorry," she murmured between tears. "Hush," I said, laughing and crying at the same time. "You're alive." During the reception at a nearby estate between toasts and hors d'oeuvres, Frank explained it all. The accident was real, but the death report wasn't. When we intercepted the threat against Chloe, we knew she was the next target. We couldn't protect her 24/7 without tipping them off. So with her consent, we staged it. The wrecked car, an unidentified body from the morgue, and Chloe vanished into witness protection. It was hard, I know. But it was the only way to protect her, and in the process make Ethan and Eleanor lower their guard, thinking they'd tied up another loose end. The threatening text I got, I said, remembering. "You're next." That was us. Frank admitted, slightly sheepish. We needed you to be scared for your reaction to be believable. It was a dirty move. I'm sorry. I couldn't be angry. It had worked. It had saved Chloe, and in a way it had kept me alert. And this, I said, looking at Chloe, who was smiling shyly. We spent a lot of time together in hiding, planning, Frank said, taking his wife's hand. What started as a strategy became something real. It was the final twist, the most beautiful and unexpected one. Not all secrets were sinister. Some, like this one, were filled with hope. As evening fell, I stepped away from the party for a moment. I walked over to a pergola covered in wisteria, rocking Daniel, who was starting to wake up. From there I could see Frank and Chloe dancing, my grandmother chatting animatedly, Michael the PI raising a glass of wine. The poison had been eradicated from my blood. The fear was slowly, steadily fading. The shadows of the past were still there, long and cold, but they no longer reached me. The light of the present was stronger, now the light of the southern sun, the laughter of friends, the warm, perfect weight of my son in my arms. Eleanor was locked away forever. Ethan, too. Their legacy of death was over. Mine, on the other hand, was just beginning. It wasn't a fairy tale happy ending. It was too soon for that, and the scars were deep, but it was an ending with justice. And with a beginning fragile and full of light that was snuggled against my chest, looking up at me with eyes that, for the first time in a long time, saw only peace. I smiled, and for the first time the smile wasn't forced or a weapon or a mask. It was just a smile. A mother in the sun, safe.